to skeptical minds, a lot of this has a choreographed feel to it. President Trump saying, well, within 2 weeks, we're going to decide whether to bomb the Fordo facility or not, which of course is something Iran would pay close attention to. And the images of trucks leaving the Fordo facility, perhaps carrying away some of that very valuable plutonium. The timing of a lot of this, and as you say, the sort of symbolic return of fire by Iran later today, like two men in a duel who agree to sort of wound each other but not do any real damage and then call it quits.
Yeah, I think there's been a huge amount of damage done to Iran, so they knew their options were terrible. And I want to explain something a little bit more about the Iranians. In the book, the new book I've got, the Statecraft 2.0, I have a long chapter on Iran, and I go through every administration from Carter to today, their approach to the Iranians and the Iranian responsiveness. Three things emerge from that to me. One is the most important priority for the Iranians is regime survival. Two is don't ever get into a direct war with the United States because that threatens regime survival. And by the way, it dates from the Iran-Iraq War when the United States, under the Reagan administration, reflagged all shipping going into the Gulf and going to Basra, to Iraq, because Iran had tried to stop all shipping so that the oil revenues for Iraq would dry up. The Ayatollah Khomeini declared when that war began, they would fight the war as long as it took. And then he does a ceasefire because he sees what's happening and fighting us. That, I think, cemented an image in Khomeini, the current supreme leader's mindset, that the thing that can really threaten the future of the Islamic Republic is getting into a war with the United States. So he doesn't want to look weak, but we see there's a whole history of making tactical concessions when the regime feels that they're facing something that could be very costly as they define or measure cost. That's why earlier today, before all this, I was predicting they would do something. But I felt it would be symbolic, and the sole purpose was to show they weren't weak, because weakness, I think, also threatens the regime. But getting into a war with the United States isn't an abstraction, and it threatens the regime much more immediately. So I felt they would do something along these lines, and we're seeing it. And that's why I say, for me, this had a predictable feel. Pat, you're describing it as if it's all choreographed a certain way. I'm not sure it was choreographed a certain way, but I think it did reflect an interesting convergence of interest. The Ali Khamenei did not want to get into a war with the United States, and Donald Trump didn't want to get into an ongoing conflict with anybody in the Middle East. So it may not have been choreographed, but there was a convergence of interest here.
Who comes away with what if this, in fact, is a ceasefire that holds?
Well, I think Israel comes away with a lot. I think Donald Trump comes away with a lot. I think the Iranians come away with very little, except the fact they still exist as a regime. I think to understand how much the Iranians have lost, and this is an unbelievable miscalculation again. It's worth sort of noting. Yahya Sinwar was convinced on October 7th he was going to trigger the collapse of Israel because all the fronts would go into war against Israel and Israel wouldn't be able to sustain it. Well, he's no longer alive. Hassan Nasrallah thought he could orchestrate a conflict with Israel, but only in the northern part of the country, so the most of Lebanon would be intact and he wouldn't be at risk. Well, he's no longer with us. The supreme leader who counted on Assad in Syria knows that Assad is no longer there. And the supreme leader may still be with us, but the whole strategy that he building up a network of proxies to create this ring of fire around Israel, to keep it under pressure and make it unlivable. That ring of fire, all these proxies, they've been decimated. And now the Iranians have been decimated. And the context within Iran prior to this, prior to Israel carrying out the attack, I guess 12 days ago, they had a huge devaluation of the currency. To give you an idea, the official exchange rate was something like 42,000 rial to the dollar, and it went to 1,040,000 rial to the dollar, meaning the currency was valueless. If you had a bank account, it basically went to zero. They have been rationing electricity to government offices, schools, and businesses. This is a country that produces natural gas and oil, and they had to ration electricity. They have profound water shortages to the point where they won't be able to sustain their current population with the water availability, and something drastic changes. So they were in shambles prior to this, and then Israel comes in, decapitates the military. The top 15 officers of the Iranian military who've been together for the last 30 years are all dead.
Hi, I'm Janice, and I am co-founder of Jews United for Democracy and Justice, as well as the America at a Crossroads weekly virtual town hall series. If you like this video, don't just watch. Head over to our website where you can subscribe for early access to new programs, see our upcoming schedules, and participate in our weekly live streams. You can also connect directly with our guests live on Zoom. Head over to JewsUnitedForDemocracy.org. Thanks for watching.
The parallel leadership of the Revolutionary Guard, basically there to be the kind of military watchdog of the military to ensure there's no coup attempt. The Basij, which are the popular militia the Iranian leadership uses to basically contain the public when it protests, to crack down on them. The top of that leadership has been killed. These were all people who were supposedly in safe places, unassailable, invulnerable, and the Israelis killed them all. And it didn't stop after the first 2 days. In the last 2 days, they got the leaders of the remaining leaders of the Quds Force, especially those who were the liaison with Hamas and Hezbollah. Supposedly, again, they were hidden away, especially after almost 12 days. How could they not be in safe places? And yet the Israelis knew where they were. So, by the way, whatever the Iranians may have gotten out of Fordo, and it would not have been the centrifuges. They're too delicate to move unless you have a long time to prepare the move, but it probably was the highly enriched uranium. But can the Iranian leadership believe that the Israelis won't know where that is? I tend to doubt it.
Thank you so much, Ambassador Dennis Ross. We will have programs coming up, the usual Wednesday program and more programs next week for you to follow. Mayor Karen Bass on July 2nd. And all through the summer, we're going to be catching up and keeping up with what's going on. Thank you for your eyes and your ears and your support of this program. You can see a link on how you can support it further. I'm Pat Morrison, and I thank you very much for giving us this part of your evening.